to VFD Vibes, your place for all things related to variable frequency drives. If you're interested in how to make things turn, or manufacturing technology in general, then this is the place for you. In our last episode, we went behind the scenes of Yaskawa's intern program, how it works, what makes it different, and how it's designed to develop the next generation of engineers, professionals, and leaders. But that only tells part of the story, because the real question is, what happens next? In this episode, we're talking to people who lived it. They started as interns at Yaskawa and made the decision to stay, grow, and build their careers here. You'll hear what they worked on, what stood out, and what ultimately made Yaskawa the right place for them in the long term. So instead of hearing about the program, you're going to hear the outcomes. Let's get into it. I'm here with our first guest, Josh Julius, who is Yaskawa's Industrial Channel Manager. Josh, can you tell us how long you've been with Yaskawa and what you are responsible for in your current role?
Yeah, definitely. I've been with Yaskawa for just over 12 years now. My current role is to manage our industrial distribution, resellers, integrators, all across the states. So my bottom line goal is to help them grow their business, try to find new channel partners in places where we don't have coverage, and act as an advocate for them up at the factory.
Great. Actually, you're a returning guest, so thanks for being on again.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So the reason you're on this episode, obviously, about internships is because you started your career with Yaskawa as an intern.
Yeah.
If you think back to when you were exploring internships and looking where to go, what made you choose Yaskawa?
Well, I had actually interned with one of Yaskawa's distributors in South America before I graduated from school. So I had some exposure to Yaskawa's products prior to coming here to do an internship. And, I'd heard some really wonderful things about the company, and that's what had piqued my interest. And since I had a knowledge base, kind of understanding the basics of how drives worked and how to program them, I applied for a co-op right out of college and started working on our tech support department, which is really a nice rough and tumble way to learn anything about the drives very quickly. So it was a really great way to expand my knowledge of the products even further.
Great. And for the listeners, if you remember from the last episode, internship is typically 3 months over summer, but a co-op is a summer plus a semester for a total of 6 months. So you did the summer plus fall or spring plus summer?
It was actually, after I graduated, I did it for 6 months, the beginning January through June. So it was 6 months from winter to summer, basically.
Oh, awesome. And that's a scenario we didn't really talk about, is how some people still intern with companies after graduating. Yeah. As a great way to find out if it's a fit for them.
And that's exactly why I did it, too. I wanted to kind of do a little bit of a chemistry test.
So while you were in it then, what stood out most about your experience, and what was something different than you expected?
I was really shocked at how hands-on it was, and it was a really great exposure to actually having a function within the company. What was great about it is you get to go through all the training of the different products. You get to put your hands on it. You get to do the hands-on troubleshooting, all of the programming, and that's really how you can get your understanding of the product before you kind of take that next step of getting on the phones with customers, which was something I was able to do during my co-op, which was really cool. The nice thing is there's a lot of safety nets in place, so they're not just throwing you to the sharks right away. You kind of start by listening to one of the other techs on their calls with any of the customers that call in. And so you can kind of understand the questions to ask and how the dialogue normally would go in order to get the information that you're looking for. And then kind of the next step after that is you will be working with a customer, but you'll have one of the more seasoned tech support veterans in your ear giving you some guidance and letting you know, hey, maybe ask this question so we can find out if this is an overvoltage fault or something like that. So it's very measured, it's very practical. And what's nice about it is you don't feel like you're drowning. It's like you've always got somebody there to support you. And then finally, when they are like, oh, you've earned your wings, now you can kind of hop on these calls and service them to your own ability. You still have the ability to go into another tech support engineer's cubicle and kind of powwow with them and put your heads together to solve problems. So I love the collaboration. I love the practicality of it. And it was great exposure to real world jobs, which eventually I got hired full time into that tech support role. So it was a great foray into that position.
Yeah, it's a great department because you not only learn the product of a company, you tend to learn a little how the company runs because you have to be able to handle warranty, returns, other things. But you also learn how to communicate with customers and how to communicate business to business, business to customer, which is a great skill to have. So to be getting that out of an internship or co-op experience is fantastic. Is there something you learned during that period that you still use today?
It's funny that you kind of led right into it with that last point that you made there, Greg. I think that having a customer-facing position and learning how to talk with customers, and even some instances where someone might call in and they're under pressure or a deadline to get something fixed, you can kind of learn how to assuage a scenario where cooler heads prevail, right? And talking through issues and coming to a solution together. It's always really rewarding at the end of that call when you hear the thank you. And I think that that is really reinforcing those abilities to assist a customer and be able to de-escalate problems. And that's something that I think carries throughout all of my roles I've had at Yaskawa, moving to sales afterwards. You've worked with customers. You've gotten to learn the products and how they function in facilities. And now, even in my role as a channel manager, if there's any type of conflict that we're trying to overcome, I always try to position it as us against the problem, right? So it's always kind of coming in with a collaborative approach. And I think that seed was very early planted in my co-op in the tech support group.
There's definitely something to be said for being able to portray both a sense of calm and urgency at the same time. So when you're working with someone, they know you're doing your best and as fast as you can, but you're helping everyone feel calm and at ease at the same point.
It's a delicate balance, no doubt about it.
Did you have a mentor that might have shaped or made your experience better?
Yeah, there were a couple of tech support veterans who really helped guide and give me better understanding of the products as we were walking through things. And actually, one of them now is the head of our tech support department, Asasio. So it's good to still be able to have a working relationship with him after all these years. He was always kind of the networks guru at the time. So if anyone would call in about, Ethernet IP, it was still something that I think most of us were getting our heads around because we were really seeing the move to network protocols at the time and having that be a much more robust common offering. And so Asasio was the go-to guy for anything and all things that had to do with network protocol. So he impressed a lot of that knowledge upon us because while he would help us solve the problem right away on the phone call with the customer, he would also take the time afterwards to explain how we got there and really embed that understanding so that next time you had a way of being able to deal with it without having to lean on another tech support guy's timeline to help.
Yeah, there's a difference between parodying someone else's answer and actually understanding the topic.
Absolutely.
So that you're developing your own answer and then can adapt that knowledge to the next call or the next problem that comes on. So how much would you credit your internship experience to where you are today?
Well, I think they both laid the foundation of, one, my understanding of drives in general, but two, how to work at a company. And one like Yaskawa specifically, you get to know a lot of those people in the internship. And I think that was one of the things that stuck out to me afterwards was how much I really enjoyed working with everybody at Yaskawa. So here I am 12 years later, and I think a lot of that's due to the exposure of a great company with great people.
Great. And if someone were considering an internship at Yaskawa or another company, would you have any advice that you would like to impart on them?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really tried to do, especially as I was interviewing and trying to figure out where I would fit within the organization, is to kind of brush up on our products. So the nice thing is Yaskawa's got a lot of availability of e-learning modules and all sorts of white papers. And I think if there's an interest to work at the company, it goes a long way by coming in and showing that you've already done your homework a little bit on the front end and you've got a little bit of an understanding of the products. And I think that that's true in anything you do. When you go and visit a customer, you want to make sure that you've done your research on them a little bit and understand what their value is and what's important to them. And so I think that not just carries through with trying to find a job or an internship, but through a lot of practices in your professional career. You can stay ahead of things and be educated on them. It's going to go a long way for you.
Well, that's a great piece of advice. Thanks again, Josh, for joining us. And now for our second guest. I have with me Ty Phillips, the Senior Manager of Low Voltage Drives Engineering. Ty, can you tell us how long you've been with Yaskawa and what you're responsible for in your current role?
Yes. Thanks, Greg. I've been with the company for about 30 years, and currently I lead several different engineering teams, and basically we are responsible for product development as well as test and certification services, and I also oversee the labs that we have here.
Oh, very cool. So thinking way back, maybe I shouldn't say way back, I don't want to date you too much. When you were looking to intern, looking around, looking at different companies, what made you choose Yaskawa?
So at the time, and I'm dating myself here, but this was the mid-90s, and I actually looked through ads in the Chicago Tribune, and I saw which companies were hiring, and Yaskawa did not have a formal program at the time, but I had two offers. One was from a company that did like flow control valves, and the other was from Yaskawa. Now, I'm an electrical engineer. I have an EE degree, and drives seemed a whole lot more interesting than flow control valves, even though I think, if I remember correctly, the other offer paid a little bit more.
Yeah, it's not always about the money. And I know there's rumors at the company that you were the first intern since the program didn't exist.
Yes, in popular lore, I was Yaskawa's first intern. I have no way to confirm that that's technically correct, but I will let the legend continue.
Great. So what was your role during that internship, and what kinds of projects did you get to work on?
As an engineering intern, I assisted with product testing. So that involved UL certification, and also we had some new products that were being developed over in Japan at the time, and they were sending over software updates, and we were testing those. I also worked on organizing technical drawings, which was a little bit of a kind of a grunt work or organizational kind of administrative job, but put a lot of effort into it, and I did get some positive feedback on that. So I was also able to get into the field a little bit. So I accompanied one of our experienced engineers on a visit to an automotive plant on the south side of Chicago to troubleshoot a VFD issue. And that was pretty cool. I'd never been in an automotive plant before. It was a great experience.
Yeah, it sounds pretty well-rounded, everything from customer visits to engineering to a little bit of the office tasks that we've all had to do. I know one of my first internships, I was tasked with doing a lot of CAD organizing and updating. And the big benefit was I got very proficient at CAD. Even though I was a double E, as I moved in my career and started seeing electrical one-line drawings, that CAD experience actually came in more handy than I thought it would.
You know, I think that these early formative experiences we have are, like you said, they stick in your head. And I got a lot of exposure to the different drawing types that stick with me to this very day. And I actually remember certain part numbers for certain Yaskawa components going from way back to this period.
Is there something you learned during that internship that you still use today?
That is a good question. I think the big thing that I learned was probably that the job is not like school, which, you know, I think I probably knew that going in, but I was a little bit naive. And so school was very academic. It was very textbook oriented, and the internship was very hands-on. And so I learned what it was like to be an engineer in the real world, and just being a little bit less green and getting exposure to working with people of different ages and people from different backgrounds. And so that was a really valuable and rewarding experience.
Great. Yeah, I agree. School was very theoretical. You learned a lot of the theories about motor design, for example, a class that I didn't particularly care for.
Me neither. And look where we ended up.
Exactly. And I thought I wanted to get into some circuit design and some of the more theoretical realms. And then when I got into the real world and had similar experiences to you, got my hands on products, started seeing automation in the real world, that completely shaped what I wanted to do and kind of changed my direction. And it was all thanks to internships. Was there anything that stood out about the experience, something that was different than you expected?
Yeah, I mean, similar to my last answer, I was very surprised. I was actually talking to John Otero this morning about this, and we were kind of reminiscing. I had this idea in my head of what an engineering job would be like. And it was kind of this, you know, I viewed it as this white-collar enterprise. And I think it was based on visits to the office of my father, who was an engineer as well. He worked in the telecom industry, worked for AT&T and Bell Labs. And I would go in and they had this sprawling, very impressive office building. And they had an automated robot that would deliver the mail in the office. And, this was back in the 80s, so it was pretty cool. And I walked in and he had a whiteboard. At the time, a whiteboard instead of a chalkboard was novel to me as a kid, And so it seemed very, he was in upper management at that time. So it seemed very like suit and tie, white collar. And I got on my internship and like my first week on the job, at the time we're wearing at least shirt and tie. We didn't have suits. We're going into the warehouse to cannibalize parts out of a dryer that we needed to send to customers. This is the kind of stuff we did back then. And so it was very hands-on.
You're handed a screwdriver. Here, take this apart.
Exactly. And I was like, cool, roll up our sleeves and let's get to work. I liked that. It was not it was so different than school. It was closer in many ways the lab aspects of school and less like the classroom.
Yes. Did you have a mentor that might have really shaped your experience?
Well, because some of these people still work here, I have to choose my words carefully in case they hear this, but I had multiple mentors. And one of them is a gentleman who is in charge of our test and certification group under my purview, and that's John Cairo. So he actually took me out on my first field service trip, and I still learn from him to this day, and I like to think that goes both ways. John Arturo was a mentor. Mike Mikowski, who works in our technical support group, was an early mentor. Mike Krasinski was another mentor. I have many mentors that are still with the company to this day, and so it's really cool to be able to connect with those people now and talk about how things have changed and how far we've come in our careers.
Absolutely. And those guys are all a wealth of knowledge.
They are.
As I've gotten to know them in the last couple of years.
Fantastic.
So how much credit would you give your internship experience to where you are today in your career?
100%, for better or worse. No, but really, it's what's led to my entire career here. It taught me what a VFD was. I didn't know what a drive was. I didn't even know about the entire field of industrial automation. I didn't really know anything about manufacturing, I was pretty green. And so just to be exposed to all these different aspects of what it's like to run a manufacturing business and to learn about this industry that I was ignorant of, it was really cool. And again, it's 100% of why I'm here today, because I had an internship with Yaskawa and I've spent my entire career here. For a Gen X person to spend their whole career at one company at my age, that's pretty unusual. And I think it's a testament to what a great place this is to work.
Yeah, that's a great story. Now, to wrap things up, if someone was considering an internship at Yaskawa or another company, would you have any advice to give them?
I would. And my advice is that do it, because there's absolutely no substitute for the experience that you gain at an internship or co-op type opportunity. Obviously, you can apply the skills that you learn in the classroom. And as you said, that's more theoretical. But you gain specialized knowledge, which is a huge thing. And typically, a lot of times what interns do, they'll work on these kind of pet projects or side projects that the full-time staff don't necessarily get a chance to work on. So you become a little bit of a specialist, and that's a nice kind of notch to put on your resume. So you learn how to form great working relationships, as I said earlier, with people of all ages and from different backgrounds. And of course, as I just alluded to, it's a great resume builder. So as a college student, I think that an internship is one of the best shortcut hacks you can have to do the adulting thing. So I couldn't recommend it enough.
Great. That's a great piece of advice. And thanks for joining us today, Ty.
Thanks, Greg.
And now for our third and final guest. I have with me Mark Baumgartner. He is the manager of electromechanical engineers here at Yaskawa. Mark, can you tell us what you're responsible for in your current role?
Yeah, so I'm the manager of electromechanical engineering, as you alluded to there. I manage engineers on the low voltage drive side of our business. So we develop both peripheral solutions for the drives, and then also we'll sometimes take drives that are globally developed and then adapt them to our marketplace. Like one common example, we recently released 600 volt drives for the North American marketplace. That doesn't have so much global appeal, but for the YAI marketplace, it's very much has appeal. And my team assisted with the development of that, not only in terms of design, but then also in terms of type testing as well.
Very cool. So kind of that market specialization for the needs we have at YAI.
Exactly, yeah.
And how long have you been with Yaskawa?
So I started 23 years ago as a co-op.
Wow.
And yes, and then full-time now I'm a little more than 20 years in.
Great.
Had a few different roles along the way, but 20 years full-time in some capacity.
Cool. So we're going to traverse back 23 years. And if you can remember back to when you were looking to be an intern at a company, what made you choose Yaskawa?
So I had previously worked at a paper mill in northeastern part of the state of Wisconsin here, and I had a lot of exposure to PLCs, servos, and drives. some of the products that we make, a lot of those were actually competitor products, but also some Yaskawa products in there as well. I happened to come across Yaskawa at the UW-Madison Career Fair when I was a student there. And I had listed those things on my resume as far as like having some experience with that, and talked to a recruiter from Yaskawa, and one thing led to another, and I did an interview, and then I got hired on as a co-op. It seemed like it was a good kind of fit based on what I had been exposed to in the past, and I was kind of excited to keep going on some of the things I got a little bit of exposure to in my previous job.
And every episode that I have a UW-Madison guest, I do a call out because that's where I went to school. And
Wonderful. Yeah, we're well represented here, I think, right?
So in that internship role, what kinds of projects did you get to work on?
So I actually did 2 co-ops at Yaskawa. My first one was in the motion applications group. So that's on the motion business unit. And then the second one was in our drives product engineering group. Over the years, we kind of grew and expanded, and we had to divide up the group a bit as we expanded. So that group that I had done my second co-op in was sort of the genesis for the team I manage now.
Okay.
But yeah, so I had very different projects with the 2 groups. There were great experiences in both cases. And in the motion applications group, I did software templates for some of the more sophisticated applications where customers kind of wanted our assistance in doing the programming to get our servo products to work on their applications. And then one of the things that really stuck out for what I did in the drives product engineering group was at that time we had just launched our G7 drive, that is our high performance 3-level drive. I'm kind of showing my age a bit. We had just launched it at that time when I was doing my co-op there. So we wanted to have some lab test data to back up some of our specifications and waveforms and things like that. So I was tasked with the responsibility a lot of the time when I was there of verifying certain specifications and having some actual test data from the lab to back that up.
Man, that sounds like solid work for a co-op, right? I mean, these are projects that meant something to the company.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
That's really cool. And for those listening, because I don't talk about it much on this podcast, when we say motion, that is our servo and coordinated motion group.
Right.
Same division as us, but we focus on VFDs now, whereas that group does the servo work. Mm-hmm. What stood out about your experience? Was there anything different than what you expected?
Well, I think you hit on it just a moment ago there. They're very good, meaningful projects. And then not only that, but I was given a lot of independence and trust with all those projects. I don't think I was ever told exactly how to do everything. I knew where the finish line was, what the expected objectives were, but I was never told how to get from point A to point B really with anything. I was given a lot of independence, a lot more than I expected in terms of how to manage things. Like sometimes I had some struggles with having to filter signals, for example, going into the scope. I was just kind of given the autonomy to work in the lab with the lab staff and technicians to gather the equipment I needed, make some maybe filter circuits or things like that I needed to do in order to get adequate data, but
definitely weren't micromanaged.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But on the flip side, at that stage in your career, there can be a lot of questions and things. Did you have a mentor or a mentor moment that really shaped your experience?
Yeah, and I'll go back to what I was doing on the motion applications engineering side regarding that. One of the templates that we made for a customer was actually for a bottle labeler application. And in that template, it was highly dependent on accurate photo eye sensor scans. But as we found out when we did our first field trial with it, it actually was not working as well as we had hoped for false scan. So in other words, if it picked something else up other than what we were intending to have it scan, we were having some trouble with that. So Michael Miller, who's a senior manager over on the motion side, now at that time was my mentor, and we actually got appointed to be a Tiger team to figure out what was going on in the field and how to resolve that issue. So I was tasked with the responsibility of going back in the lab and trying to reproduce a problem. It's hard to fix a problem if you don't exactly know what's going on in the first place. So I was able to successfully reproduce a problem and kind of pinpoint it to false scans there. And then there was another engineer in the team who essentially functioned as a software engineer who gave me some good hints as to how he handled situations like that in a similar application with false scans and how to handle that. So we were able to work in the logic that he had used in this other application, and that successfully fixed the problem. I was able to demonstrate in the lab that it successfully fixed that, and then my mentor was able to go out into the field and successfully fix that. But it was an interesting experience. I was getting direct calls from our channel partner that was involved there, and I wasn't quite expecting that as an intern to have them calling me directly.
Special task force.
Yeah, exactly. And Now, if you were to ask me to sit down and reproduce the logic and the coding that we had to do in order to fix that issue, I doubt I could do that right now. But I took away an important lesson from that. And what I took from that is you don't become better at engineering in spite of the struggles you have, but really because of them. And so as a manager myself now, I really look for candidates that have successfully managed through adversity. And I think that was an important lesson for me. And I hope everyone else that works on my team successfully can handle adverse situations like that, because they do come up all the time. And it's important to be able to work through them.
Is there something you learned as an intern that you still use today?
Well, I'm an electrical engineer by degree. And a few years ago, I was asked to also start managing mechanical engineers on the team. So back when, as I was explaining, the product engineering group on the drive side, we were small enough, we hadn't grown as much. So there's mechanical engineers, test engineers, and electrical engineers kind of all mixed together just because we were a small team. But we had to use our skills interchangeably. And sometimes electrical team members were asked to work on mechanical projects. And as a co-op, in addition to some of the testing I was doing, I was also asked to set up a way of verifying the vibration on our shaker table using an accelerometer and some signals from that. But I learned a lot about what goes into vibration testing and the importance of having the right center of gravity mounting and things like that. So a lot of what I do now in terms of managing mechanical engineers, I've had to kind of learn as I go, but it was good to have some good exposure to that previously. So it wasn't completely a new concept when I started doing that a few years ago.
Great. How much credit would you give your internship experience as to where you are today in your career?
Well, I, of course, got a good head start on Yaskawa at being in both motion and drives roles during my 2 times as a co-op. And it's good to come in to an organization already knowing a little bit about it, not only the products, but having good relationships with some people there already before you even walk in the door full time. So that was very helpful. But I think the other thing I took from that, too, is we have this Kaizen approach here. And that applies, of course, to our products and processes, but also it very much should apply to our engineering work as well. So having that continuous improvement mindset that I was exposed to from the beginning, I think really helped shape me and continues to shape me to this day as I've gone along in my career.
And I've talked on other episodes about the quality that we have here at Yaskawa. And I've mentioned it's not just in our products, it's in our processes. And just listening to you talk, it's ingrained in the way that you do your job, the way that you do your work. And I think that's really ingrained in our culture here, which I think is a very cool thing. So let's finish up with, would you have any advice you would give someone considering an internship at Yaskawa or another company?
Well, as I was explaining before, I think it's important to be able to handle adverse situations because they come up all the time. The other thing I would say, too, is that very few students coming in here, and I certainly didn't, very few students will come in with all the technical knowledge you need to do an internship or a full-time position with us. And that's okay. You will kind of learn as you go here. But there's several things that you can come in with regardless of what your technical skill set. I like to use the CLAIR acronym for this. And I didn't come up with this myself, but there's a prominent leadership podcaster that I've heard mention this. I call it CLAIR. It's important to be coachable, likable, adaptable, have integrity, and be reliable. You want someone who's coachable because there's always things to learn, especially as someone who's an intern or an entry-level engineer fresh out of school. You have to be likable because there's always going to be other people that they need to help you do what you do and to do it better. So it's important to form good relationships in the organization. You have to be adaptable because, again, there's adverse situations that come up. There's situations that you aren't expecting, and there's sometimes priority shifts in what we do. So it's important to be adaptable and be willing to kind of bend or do a different task than what you were planning on doing that day. Integrity, it's always important here to have integrity in your work, make sure you're producing quality work, that it's not going to be questioned, and really taking pride in producing good work with what you do. And then reliable. I do want students to be reliable, not just punctual and showing up for work on time, but also meeting deadlines, the importance of keeping me up to date on schedules, or if things need to change because of unexpected situations that have come up. So that's all important.
Yeah, that's all great. That's fantastic advice. So, Mark, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome, Greg.
As you heard today, an internship is more than just a short-term experience. It can be the starting point for something much bigger. What stood out across these stories is that it wasn't just about the work. It was about the people, the opportunities, and the chance to grow into something more over time. That's really the difference. When an internship is done right, it doesn't just prepare you for a job, it opens the doors to a career. If you're a student listening, hopefully this gave you a clear picture of what's possible. And if you're part of an organization, it's a reminder of the impact a strong internship program can have, not just today, but years down the road. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like or follow this podcast to stay informed when new episodes launch. And if we're doing a great job, please leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for joining us, and as always, we'll see you next time on VFD Vibes.